The F1 teams have all confirmed their 2023 driver lineups as we head towards the new season. So it's time for me to rank the lineups from worst to best. Let's have a look. My name's Andy and this is Behind the Drive. Number 10. Alfa Towery. Alfa Towery's new look driver lineup is the worst on the grid, in my opinion. The problem I have with the pairing of De Vries and Tsunoda is the fact that the Dutch driver is unproven in the sport and the Japanese driver has yet to prove himself over the course of a full season. The AlphaTauri driver lineup is close to the next one on this list, but ultimately there's a level of inexperience in this team that means I have doubts. I think that the move to bring Nick De Vries into the AlphaTauri setup was a sensible decision. The team could benefit financially from Gasly's contract being bought out, and De Vries is a driver that was available from Mercedes. Not only this, but De Vries' cameo appearance for Williams at Monza was a brilliant advert for his talent if his Formula E and Formula 2 titles weren't enough already. Having De Vries in the team is a relatively safe bet, but he's fundamentally a rookie and will be finding his feet in a new team at the start of the new season. Tsunoda is going into his third season with AlphaTauri, and personally, I believe that if the Red Bull Juniors had done more to prove themselves last year, I don't think he'd be on the grid. Unlike many Red Bull talents that come through this team, I don't see many other teams who'd be keen to sign Tsunoda based on his performance in the sport to date, so this will be a very important year for the Japanese driver. Number 9. Williams. Williams next, and this driver pairing consists of a driver that's doing very well in the sport since joining the team, and a new rookie to Formula 1. Alex Albon is a very strong driver for Williams, and I think they made a good decision to bring him back into the sport last season, and he rewarded the team with some daring strategies and an ability to extract the maximum from his car and get points whenever the opportunity came up. I think Albon's long-term contract with the team is a good step for both the driver and the team. However, whilst Albon is now a proven talent and a driver that many teams would consider, his new teammate is not yet proven. Logan Sargent is a graduate from the Williams Academy and will be an important driver in the sport as the first American since Alexander Rossi. Sargent spent just a single season in F2 and did well to finish fourth in the standings, but there are questions over whether the driver could have benefited from another season in that feeder series. Personally, I think Williams lost when they lost in the race for the signature of Nick De Vries, as pairing him with Alex Albon could have been a lineup that would end up significantly higher in this ranking. Number 8. Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo next, and I think that the pairing of Bottas and Zhou is good for this team in their current position. They both performed well in 2021, albeit with Bottas outscoring his teammate by a significant margin. But when you consider where this team is, they have the right drivers to achieve the results they need. Zhou coming into the team last year was a financially driven decision, and he did well through the season, particularly in the second half of the year once he was comfortable in the car. However, there is a question over whether the new Audi backing will mean he has a long-term future at the Swiss-based team. For me, I think Zhou still has something to prove, and I believe he has the potential to impress in 2023. Bottas is a driver that will have a seat at Alfa Romeo or Audi for as long as he likes, in my view. He's a reliable driver and he can be trusted to perform well in the midfield team. There's no doubt that Bottas is the leader in the Alfa Romeo setup and the stronger driver of the pairing, and I believe he'll continue to support Zhou in his development through the coming season. Number 7. Haas. Haas have made a significant change to their driver lineup this year by replacing Schumacher with Hülkenberg. To be honest, I struggled to see the logic. There's no doubt that they've improved their lineup in the short term, but the future potential of the Magnussen-Hülkenberg pairing is very limited. In these two drivers, the Haas team have a pair that will be likely to achieve whatever their car is capable of in 2023. The team switched their focus to 2023 early on last year, so with these two drivers in the team, it's more likely that they'll progress up the order. However, they took the same approach in 2021 to focus on 2022 and failed to deliver. Magnussen is a driver that unexpectedly rejoined the grid in 2022, and I think he's a dependable driver. He had moments of brilliance last season, like his pole position in Brazil, and I think he took on the team leader role seamlessly. Hülkenberg is a very similar type of driver, a dependable midfield specialist that has never managed a podium but can be quick out the box, as we've seen with his COVID-related stand-in appearances over the last few years. On the whole, I think the Haas driver pairing is good but not great, and lacks long-term ambition. Number 6. Aston Martin. Alonso's move to Aston Martin brings that team further up in this ranking. The Spanish driver is certainly going to be the leader in the setup for 2023. The Aston Martin team is one that did well throughout last year as they developed their car faster than the others, and I think that this team has the potential to progress towards the front of the midfield this year. The driver pairing of Alonso and Stroll is good but not exceptional. This driver pairing will always be limited by the fact that Lance Stroll is there. The Canadian driver is still young and he could still improve, which is perhaps a likely scenario given he'll soon be learning from Alonso. However, the driver lineup as a whole is held back by Stroll at the moment. Alonso is a driver that elevates this team's ranking and is a good replacement for Sebastian Vettel. The challenge is the fact that the Spaniard is 41 years old already. For several years now, Alonso has proved he's still capable of competing on the grid despite his age, but as he continues to get older, it's likely that his skills will diminish. Either way, the Aston Martin driver pairing is about as good as it could be, given Lance Stroll is guaranteed one of the seats. Number 5. McLaren. McLaren's a team that also made a shift for 2023. For me, Lando Norris is one of the best drivers on the grid, and if he gets a car that's capable of winning races, he'll deliver for the team. But whilst Norris is better than many of the other drivers in the teams ahead of McLaren on this list, his new teammate, Oscar Piastri, is as yet unproven in Formula 1. Piastri is a driver that should have been in the sport last year. Few drivers managed to win Formula 3 and Formula 2 back to back, and the Australian driver managed to achieve that as well as a Formula 4 series the year before. Going into 2023, Piastri will finally have the opportunity to prove himself on the F1 grid. McLaren has a questionable history with bringing young drivers into the sport though. As for every driver like Norris, there's also a Stoffel Vandoorne or a Kevin Magnussen. But I think with Piastri, there is little doubt that he'll be able to get up to speed quickly and perform well for the team. But until he shows that in a competitive Formula 1 environment, we can't know for sure, which is why the McLaren team is in 5th on this list rather than being a bit further up the order. I would add though that the McLaren driver pairing probably has the best potential of any lineup on the grid. Number 4. Alpine. Alpine's driver pairing is also changed for 2023, as they've replaced Alonso with Gasly after the Spaniard left the team. Gasly and Ocon have a challenging history, but both drivers have a lot of potential and are reaching the peaks of their careers. Ocon has done well for Alpine for several years now, and he secured a long-term deal with the team. Bringing Gasly in to join Ocon creates an all-French lineup at the French team in Formula 1, and I think that this has massive potential from a marketing perspective. They're also both a similar standard in my view, and it will be interesting to see how these drivers compare in equal machinery in 2023. What this driver pairing lacks is a star driver, and I think this coming season will be an opportunity for each of these drivers to take on that role. If one beats the other consistently this year, then they could take that position, but it isn't clear who may come out on top at this point in time. Number 3. Red Bull. Red Bull has the third strongest driver pairing in the sport in my opinion, but it has been a very successful pairing for the last 2 seasons. Max Verstappen has won the last 2 drivers' championships for Red Bull, and it's likely that he'll be able to continue that trend. His success in 2021 was certainly supported by the efforts of Sergio Perez, and arguably wouldn't have happened without his teammate. However, on outright pace, Perez is not the strongest driver, and the pairings ahead of Red Bull each have 2 drivers which I believe are better than him. Perez's season in 2022 had moments of disappointment and he struggled at several races through the year. If Red Bull find themselves in a championship fight with another team, they need Perez to be able to perform at every single event. Ultimately, Red Bull have a driver pairing which includes the strongest driver in the sport right now in Max Verstappen, and whilst the Verstappen-Perez pairing is functional, you have to wonder if they have their eye on changing Perez in the future if Formula 1 becomes more competitive. Number 2. Ferrari. Ferrari's driver pairing of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz is one that is still relatively young, and both drivers have the potential to compete for race wins as they did in 2022. Charles Leclerc took on the team leader role throughout last season, but Sainz certainly had some poor luck early on, which may have impacted that. For me, Leclerc and Sainz are a great pairing at Ferrari, and it's clear that it isn't the drivers that are letting the team down right now. Instead, the pair need to continue providing the feedback needed to allow the team to develop their car and support where they can from a strategic perspective. Overall, I think the Ferrari pairing is the second strongest on the grid in 2023, and they're a reliable pairing and will likely be with this team for several years to come. Number 1. Mercedes. And I think it should come as no surprise that the pairing at Mercedes are at the top of this ranking. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are 2 drivers that could easily be in the running for the championship if they get the right car. Last season, the pairing at Mercedes were closely matched, with Russell ending up on top in the standings. There are some concerns regarding the pair if they end up competing directly with each other on track, and we saw that in Brazil that they were right on top of each other towards the end of the Grand Prix. If this trend continues, they may become a challenging partnership for the team to manage. But based on the performances to date, there's no doubt that Russell and Hamilton are the strongest driver pairing in the sport right now. So those are my rankings of the driver lineups for 2023. Who would you move? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content throughout the 2023 season.